All right, you guys, so we're learning our third and final type of word problem, and it is called areas with border questions. We saved the best for last. I think these are maybe the more challenging questions to do just because you have to visualize like two different things that are taking place. Um, but once you learn how to do one of them, the rest are pretty similar. So we're going to just do one example together, and then I'm going to post this so you have the practice questions. And how many practice questions are there? Hold on, let me just check. There's 1, 2, 3. So there are only 4 practice questions for you to try, which is not too bad. Okay, so the question says, a rectangular garden is to be built on a lot that measures 40 meters by 25 meters. A walkway of uniform width and equal in area to the garden must surround the garden. What dimensions must the garden have? So for a question like this, you may have to read it a couple of times to understand what's happening. I'll read it one more time. A rectangular garden is to be built on a lot that measures 40 meters by 25 meters. So where exactly is this garden? This garden is right over here. Around that garden, which is going to be built on the lot that's 40 meters by 25 meters, you're also going to be building a walkway. A walkway is just like think of it as like a pedestrian's path or something. And it's going to be uniform width, which means it's going to have the exact same width on every single side. Okay, so it's going to be the same distance from the garden to the end of the lot. And the other information they give us is that the walkway and the garden are going to have exactly the same area. What dimensions must the garden have? Now, drawing the picture, I think, is the most challenging part, and we've provided that for you. So hopefully it helps you visualize the question a little bit easier. So again, the lot that they've given us is 40 meters by 25 meters. That's the entire lot. Within that lot, we're going to be building our garden, which is over here. And then we're going to have our walkway, which is over here. And it's going to have exactly the same width all throughout. All right, so how exactly do we solve this question? The first thing I'm going to do is see this walkway that has the equal width. I'm going to give it a letter, a variable, and it's already been written for you. And that variable is the variable x. So that means our garden, if this whole entire line is 40 meters, and I know I have an x width on this side and I have an x width on this side, we need to figure, I know that's very hard to read, but that's me writing an x over here. We need to figure out what this line is going to be over here. What do you guys think? Can you figure out if this big line over here is 40 meters, and then we have an X over here and we have an X over here, can we figure out what this little line over here is going to be? Where it says 25 meters, the arrow in the walkway is that saying the distance is 25 meters. I think you understood that. And Hershey, you got it right. It's going to be 40 minus 2x. Yeah, you're going to be taking the entire line of 40 and you're going to be subtracting 2 of those little x's to get that little walkway. So let me erase everything so it's not confusing, and let's write that down. This length right over here is going to be 40 minus 2x. Let's do the exact same thing now for the width. So if this width is 25 meters, and then we have an X on this side and an X on this side, can we figure out what this little width is going to be? Yep, you guys got it right. It's going to be 25 minus 2x, exactly. So the very first thing I do is I try to figure out all of my dimensions. Also, I realize that it's kind of hard to read that. So this is going to be 40 minus 2x. And this right here is going to be 25 minus 2x. Okay, great. Keep in mind, we're trying to figure out what dimensions the garden must have. So The whole lot is 40 by 25, but we're trying to figure out how big is the garden? What are the dimensions of the garden? So we've figured out that we're going to have to multiply 40 minus 2x and 25 minus 2x, right? To solve this question, we're going to be having to multiply 40 minus 2x times 25 minus 2x. That's like saying length times width. And then over here, we need to figure out some sort of area for the garden. If we can figure out the area of the garden, then this question is super easy because I already know what the length of the garden is. It's 40 minus 2x. I already know what the width of the garden is. It's 25 minus 2x. But I don't have the area of the garden yet. But we can figure that out. By the way, we should have a let statement. And in this question, the let statement is just the width of the walkway because that's what they've already written for us in the diagram. So we're going to write that down. Let X represent the width of walkway. All right, we're going to have to do a little bit of detective work. First of all, can we figure out the area of the entire lot? Yes, and how would we figure out the area of the lot? Yep, it would be 25 by 40. Okay, so let's write that down. 40 by 25, and that one's pretty easy. It's just going to be 1,000. Okay, now they give us a little bit of a hint in the question. So let's try to find that hint in the question. And there's always going to be a hint in the question. If you feel like, oh, there's not enough information, read the question multiple times, you'll find something. So here it says a rectangular garden is to be built on a lot that measures 40 by 25. We got that. A walkway of uniform width and equal in area to the garden must surround the garden. So what does this mean? It means that the garden's area and the walkway's area have to be equal. Given this information, what do you think the area of the walkway and the garden is going to be? Yeah, Amina, you got it right. It's just going to be 500 and 500. You're basically taking the entire area of 1,000 and you're splitting it up between the two. So the area of the walkway is going to be 500 meters squared, and the area of the garden is also going to be 500 meters squared because the question very clearly says the walkway and the garden have to be the same area. We're dividing by 2, Samira, because the question says the walkway and the garden, like this area and this area, have the same exact area. So if the entire area is 1,000, that means we just split it up between these two. It's not always 2, it depends on the question. So you really have to read the question to see what they're asking, and every question might be slightly different. But in this question, because they say the area of the walkway and the area of the garden are exactly the same, we take the total area of 1,000 and we basically just split it up into 2 parts. So the area of the walkway is 500 and the area of the garden is 500. Can you explain how you got 2x again? Where, like over here? Yeah, for sure. So see how this entire line is 40 meters? And then this walkway has a length of x. And then that means this walkway also has a length of x. In order for us to get the length of this garden, we're going to take the total 40 meters, we're going to subtract 1x, and we're going to subtract another x. So in total, you're subtracting 2 x's. Do the same thing for this side. The width of the total lot is 25, but then this walkway over here is x and over here is x. So when you subtract those 2 x's, you get 25 minus 6. Okay, good. All right, perfect. So now again, our goal here is to try to figure out the area of the garden, the dimensions of the garden. We know the length of the garden is 40 minus 2x. We know the width of the garden is 25 minus 2x. We couldn't figure out the area, but now we also have the area. And what are we going to put there? We're going to put 500. Okay, so length times width is equal to 500. And now we've honestly done the hardest part of this, which was setting up our equation. Now we're going to go ahead, FOIL, factor, solve, and try to see what we can get for the letter X. What exactly is the point of getting the letter X? Well, if we know the letter X, if we know how long this walkway is, we can put that X into this and get the length of the actual garden and the width of the actual garden. All right, so let's go ahead and FOIL this. 40 times 25 is going to give me 1,000. That's the first. 40 times negative 2x is going to give me negative 80x. Negative 2 times 25 is going to give me negative 50x. Negative 2x times negative 2x is going to give me positive 4x squared is equal to 500. We're going to move everything over to one side and simplify. So this is going to be 4x squared minus 130x plus 500. Okay, so I just simplified the negative 80 minus 50 is negative 130. 1,000 minus 500 is positive 500. Now, everything here is not divisible by 4, but everything here is divisible by 2. So I'm going to factor out the 2, and I'm going to get 2x squared minus 65x plus 250 is equal to 0. I wasn't recording. So it's not a simple trinomial. I'm like trying some numbers in my head, like 25 and 10, and all of those. Nothing seems to be working. So I think for this question, I am going to have to use the quadratic formula. So this is good practice. Let's go ahead and try to use a quadratic formula. Just looking at the practice questions that I'm giving you guys, 60 by 40. There may be a couple of them where you do have to use a quadratic formula. But as promised, I'll make sure on your assessment that the numbers end up being nice and easy. Could you factor it? What did you get? 5 and 50, but that will not give you negative 65. Good try though. I always do try to factor it first. So that should always be like your first step. Okay, so for the quadratic formula, my A is equal to 2. My B is equal to negative 65, and my C is equal to 250. Okay, and now what I would like to do is write in the numbers. So it's going to be 65 plus or minus negative 65 squared minus 4 times 2 times 250 all over 4. All right, so get out your calculator. 65 times 65 minus 4 times 2 times 250 is going to give you 2225. So 65 plus or minus 2225. You guys let me know if you get something different than me and if I've made any mistakes. And this is going to be 4. Now I'm ready to actually solve my 2 different answers. So x and x. So this is going to be 65 plus square root 2225 divided by 4. So one of them I get is 28.04. And then 65 minus the square root of 2225 divided by 4. And the other one I get is 4.46. Okay, I'll pause here. Okay, now you guys, for this question, we have 2 positive answers, and that leads to a little bit of a problem, because usually if you have a negative answer for a length or a width, you can discard it. However, you have to think about this super logically. X represents the area of this little walkway. If we put X as 28, is it possible for our walkway to be 28 meters on this side and 28 meters on this side if the entire length is 40? That is not going to be possible. That means that walkway is bigger than the entire lot that they've given us. Again, is it possible for this walkway and this walkway to be 28 and 28 when the whole entire width is 25? It's not possible. So just using logic alone, we can discard 28 as our answer. It's not going to work. We think our answer should be 4.46, but we need to do a check to make sure that it actually is. Okay, so how am I going to do my check? It's going to look like this. First of all, I am going to go ahead and draw my little garden out again. So this is just the garden now. And I'm going to figure out the length of this garden, and I'm going to figure out the width of this garden. That didn't work. That should work. Okay, so remember how for the garden's length, we had 40 minus 2x, right? So I'm just going to write down the length of the garden is 40 minus 2x, which is going to be 40 minus 2 times 4.4. It really depends on how many decimal places you're carrying over. I'm just going to keep it as whatever I had as my answer there. So 40 minus 2 times 4.46, which is going to be equal to 40 minus 2 times 4.46, which is going to be equal to 31.08 meters. So that means this length over here is 31.08 meters. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to figure out the width of my garden. So the width, the formula for that, I'm just thinking back to like over here, right? So this was the length of my garden, 40 minus 2x. The width is 25 minus 2x. So I'm going to go all the way back here, and I'm going to write down the width is 20 minus 2x, which is going to be 20 minus 2 times 4.46 minus 2 times 4.46, and that's going to give me 11.08 meters. So right over here, this is 11.08 meters. Okay, so this is what I think my dimensions are based on the fact that x is equal to 4.46. Now, how do we do our check? Well, we know that when the area of the garden has to be approximately 500. So really what my check is going to be is area is going to be equal to length times width, which is going to be equal to 31.08 times 11.08. And when I multiply those numbers, I'm hoping I get really, really close. Or not at all. Where did I mess up? Oh, you know, this is where I messed up. It's actually 25, not 20. Yeah, Sri Vaishnavi, you're right. Because I'm like, it's not even close to 500. Sorry, let me do that again. So 25 minus 2 times 4.46. I just miswrote it. So this should actually be 16.08 meters, which means this, my mistake, should be 16.08. And then this should also be 16.08. Now let's see if it works. 31.08 times 16.08, and that gives me 499.7664, which is as close to 500 meters squared as possible. So now I know that these numbers have to be correct. That means the walkway, the X, which represents this walkway over here, even though the question didn't ask us what is the dimension of the walkway, we know this X is approximately 4.46 meters. And then using that X, we can put those numbers into the X's that we have for our dimensions here and here. 40 minus 2x and 25 minus 2x. So I did that over here. I figured out the length is 31.08, which I wrote here. The width is, I made a mistake. I wrote 20 by mistake. It should have been 25, 16.08. And then when you multiply these numbers, you end up getting an area of 500 meters squared. So as our final therefore statement, the question asks, what dimensions must the garden have? Therefore, the dimensions of the garden are, and you can write it as length is 30, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to write them as 31.08 meters by 16.08 meters.